Well, hello and welcome to the Excel in Retirement Podcast, where we help good people make wise financial decisions so that they can excel in their retirement. Your guide is David Treece, a financial advisor who shares his expertise to help you achieve greater peace of mind about your finances today and also have the information you need so you can create a plan for your future. I'm your host, Andy Traub. And David, we spent a lot of time on past shows talking about legacy, talking about adults and how they should handle their money. And today we're going to I'll actually walk through the steps that you should be taking with your kids or grandkids on how to introduce milestones around financial intelligence, savviness, and actions, things like credit cards and college investments and savings and spending. So, David, thanks for joining us and thanks for guiding us today.
Thanks, Andy. Looking forward to it.
So, let's just start on a personal note because I think people always appreciate stories. Which one of your kids is the saver? Which one's the spender? Or are they both one?
It's the being 4 and 8, they're a little bit young to really determine that, but they don't have money burning a hole in their pocket.
All
They'll
right,
they'll
then they're
like
savers. Listen, if they're
well,
spenders, you'd know it, bro. You know,
okay.
you would that it's if and you would know because it would be every time at the store. My youngest is a spender
Yeah.
because very, very early on, she's 14 now, but very early on, she's the one you did not want to take to the store with you
Okay.
because she is gonna work you. Like you are gonna have something in your cart by the time you leave that you did not want because you're just like, it's I call it paying the ransom when you go to the store with your kid and they're just like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, fine, just whatever, you know.
Gotta get
Um,
out.
so she's a spender, you know.
Okay.
And then my other one's like, "Oh, how much money do I have in savings?" "For this
So
much?" You know, she's a saver, you know.
so
So,
how have you dealt with that?
well, one thing that's interesting is when you see behavior in your kids and then you're like, "Oh, you should save more." And then you're like, "Wait a minute. So should I." Like it's one of those things where you're like, "Wait, who am I preaching to? Me or them?"
Right.
Because I'm a spender too.
Yeah.
And how do you handle it? I mean, I think that one of the things we've done is on a really practical level is that we opened accounts for them very early, a checking and a savings, and college savings as
Yes.
well. So I guess 3 accounts. And then we would make financial decisions for them in that my youngest cuts lawns. She has 4 lawns on her neighborhood she cuts. And so she's making about $100 a week probably in the summer.
Never heard of
And
a
so
girl once. That's amazing.
absolutely, yeah. So she's great at it. And so I automatically used to take money and put it in her savings as soon as she got paid, and with all the electronic payments now, it's pretty easy for people to pay directly and things like that. And then she would, because otherwise she would just spend it. Like, and she had her own debit card, and I try to like say, I don't think you want that. She'd ask, how much money do I have? The other thing I would do is when she'd ask how much money she had, I would only tell her what she has in her checking.
Yes.
Because I was like, "That other money's just for savings." She's like, "What's savings for?" And I'm like, "Not spending. That's what it's for." You know? So, with her, now she's like, "Hey, here's this, but put the whole thing in savings." Right? Like, transfer the whole thing into savings because she likes to have that. And here's something very interesting, and this happened literally 2 days ago. I went with her to a cell phone store because she's
Yeah.
14, has her own cell phone.
Okay.
She wanted to get a new phone. Her old phone is fine, in my opinion, but she wanted a new phone. And I was like, okay, well, let's go see what deals they have. And it was going to be like $500. And she had plenty of money. Um, and I was like, if you don't need it, I'm not going to pay for it, but you can pay for it. And she had the money and she was ready to spend that money. And we went in there. And this is another lesson of sometimes it's just good to ask. Because I called the 1-800 number for T Mobile and they said, here are your deals. I went on the app, here are their deals. I went in the store and it was a like literally 6x better deal.
Wow.
But I don't and I was like, "Hey," Lakeitha, I think was her name. I was like, "I don't wanna blow this deal up, but, like, no one has told us about this deal." She's like, "Well, just take it. Don't ask questions." And I was like, "Okay. Yes, Lakeitha," right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And so she was able to save a bunch of money, but she was ready to spend way more.
right, right. I was telling this guy, this coffee shop I used to go into, this barista, he reached out to me a while back, maybe a couple years ago now, and he was like, "I really need some help with thinking about money and stuff." And so we get lunch about every quarter or so and talk about his savings and talk about his goals and so forth. And so I was having lunch with him yesterday, and he said, or something came up about his savings, and he was asking, "Well, how much is enough?" and so forth. And it went to not only are you spending money, but you're also removing the ability to have greater money later, like the earnings that that money may earn by not
Yeah.
spending it if you could invest it. And
Yeah.
so not only are you losing $500 today, you might be losing 750 if you think about if you had that for 2 years and you're able to make $250 on it. And so
Yeah.
when you start thinking about it, and not only are you losing that, you're getting something for it, but you're losing the ability to have more later. It
Yeah.
kind of makes you think, you know?
Yeah, and again, we make no guarantee of returns, right? So you could put something in the market, it goes down. But the other is if you put it into an account that is giving you 5%
Yep.
and you don't touch it, you will get 5%, and then you will get 5% on the new total, which is, what I mean? Like, and these are the kind of things that, as we talk about children, and how to help them with financial education. And again, this is for parents or grandparents, but we'll kind of start in the middle with when they're sort of at the age of reason or math, and then we'll kind of start younger. But I had to teach my kids because I had to learn this as well. I think one of the hardest financial principles to understand is interest on both sides, meaning when you're charged interest, or you grow because of interest. So,
Yeah.
what my kids had a hard time understanding was that when we got our house, that our house was not $300,000.
Yes.
That's how much it cost initially, but our house will end up costing us $600,000 because of over 30 years of interest. And to help them understand that and the best way to say it is money costs money if you don't own it, right? You have to pay a fee on top of the money, and that's called interest. Because my kids always thought, well, interest is good. You get interest. I was like, no, but that's why you see a bank on every corner, because you know what I mean. So I think that's one of the other things is you just have to take the time on a really practical level to, you know, like when someone says, like a kid will say, I wish the government would just give everyone $1 million.
Yeah.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind, David, when I say that?
Hyperinflation.
Exactly. But I had to explain, and this was during COVID when they started sending money out to people. I said, let me tell you why this is bad. And they're like, what?
Yep.
So anyway, so let
Every
me ask you this: when you meet with a retiree and you say, you have grandkids, yep, absolutely, okay. How do you want to help them? And they say, we would love to do this, or they say, hey, we want to do something for our grandkids. Where do you start? Let's say that you say, hey, how many do you have? I got four, and they're all under 10 years old. What's your advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, you could set up custodial type accounts, and a lot of people use 529 plans for that. And there's also
Custodial meaning,
custodial, meaning that the money is held in custody for the child to give to them at a later date, and you direct the investment of how that's invested. And so you can use 529 plans for that are more educational focused, or you could use a uniform gift to minors account. Some people call it an UGMA for the initials, and you have greater leniency on how you can invest that money, and or not how you can invest it, but rather what you use it for.
right?
And so that's years ago when my dad was in this business, and remorsefully, I really enjoyed drinking Coca-Cola when I was a kid, and I wanted to own Coca-Cola stock. And so he opened a custodial account for me, and I bought Coca-Cola stock. And when I was a kid, and so it's really a cool way to teach your kid, especially like you go into Target. We're trying to teach Amelia, our 8-year-old. We probably it feels like we keep Target in business, and
Yep. Yep.
it's our the two conveniently located close to it. And, I'm like, "Amelia, did you know that you can be part owner in Target? We go there all the time, and you could be a
Yeah.
part owner in Target." And you try to make it more contextual,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
and it
Yeah.
but yeah.
Absolutely.
So did you give your kids, or do you give your kids an allowance?
I've never given my kids an allowance,
Okay, okay.
ever.
My dad was big on giving us an allowance. We had to work for it, but he always wanted us to have pocket money, and I think it's
Yeah,
something.
I think that, well, I don't know that I regularly gave them that. I
Yeah.
will say that excuse me, my kids, I remember as a kid, my dad would give me $3 a week or every other week or something like that. I mean, that was, and that was enough in 1984 to do things with. But I had responsibilities, and part of that was just pick up your room and yada yada. What I will say is that I have done a phenomenal job along with my wife of creating opportunities for my kids to make money. So at
Mm,
the age of 8, we'll go mow someone's lawn. Well, who's doing most of the mowing and the edging? Well, I am. But for them to make $30 in 45 minutes is a big deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, or just helping me with other things around the neighborhood. We would seal someone's we have these aggregate driveways, which is like basically little pebbly rocks in your driveway, and they have to seal them. It's basically concrete that the top part of it has been stripped off, and so you have to seal them every 3 or 4 years, and, people can pay up to, like, $1,000 for, like, a normal two-car, driveway. So we would charge, like, 600, and we'd make $400, but I've got my little assistant there, so she's making $100 in, a day and a half, and it's like, that's a lot of money for a kid, right? But I wanna know from you, what do you think the advantage is of an allowance for a kid, and how early? Because maybe you're a grandparent and you're like, my kids aren't really doing this with my grandkids, like, how could you start to sort of foster that? What's good
Well,
about it?
I think like having an allowance and maybe you don't earn all of it, it teaches you how to manage money to some degree. But if you're paying your kid to do chores and stuff, it's the same concept. But I mean, I really think that two things. I think that the way that we get our kids to turn out, and there's people that are into this that have way more experience than me. But in my mind, you teach them how to work and you teach them how to be generous. And then if you teach them those two things, then they tend to be better with money, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, when we got a $10 allowance, the expectation was we were going to put $1 in the offering plate on Sunday,
Right. Right.
and Dad was looking down the pew to make sure we were doing it.
Yeah.
And so that just creates a lifelong, typically someone that's going to be generous throughout their life. And I was telling this guy yesterday I was having lunch with, I was like, "Are you giving anything away? And you giving anything to charity?" And he's like, "No, I don't really do that." But I was like, what you'll find is that that money that you're probably giving to some nonprofit or a church or whatever, you probably won't even miss it. And he already had something in mind that he wanted to give money to some camp helps kids, inner city kids ride bicycles and things like that. And so I don't know. I think if you can teach a kid how to work and you can teach them how to be generous, you're well on your way to putting them in the right direction, you know?
Yeah, and I think about this, we can't teach what we don't know, and so I understand, I understand that someone might be listening to this and maybe their kids, like, I don't worry about my daughter Caroline's kids when she becomes a mom, because she's pretty financially responsible. I worry about my youngest kids because I'm like, their mom at that point is gonna be a spender, And so it's helping those generations make those decisions. So back to those accounts, and I've specifically dealt with this with an 18, 16, and 14-year-old. We've been able to pull from some of those accounts for education spending, even as homeschoolers, is because it's classified. You have to use that money for education, and we've used it for class registration, things like that, not just college. But maybe just really quick, like, what is the advantage of one account over the other? That UGMA versus the 529.
The tax implications, the UGMA is hyper tax advantage and the UGMA is not. I mean, you can have tax deferral growth on an
Sorry,
UGMA.
I think you said UGMA for both. Which is better?
I'm sorry, the 529 is what I would call hyper tax advantaged, and see tax deduction going in, and then you don't have to pay taxes on it coming out, and the UGMA is just a tax deferral account, so you'll pay taxes on the gains when you sell those or take money out, uh, and so that's the big thing. The
But
other
the
cool.
529 is exclusively educational expenses.
Yeah, but it's got
Okay.
a lot more lenient recently, and you can use it for. It used to have to be like college focused, like only, but now you can use it for computers and trade school and cosmetology school, and and we'll have to. I'm 90% certain I've got this right, but the new law was if there you can if you don't use it for educational purposes, there's 30,000 that can be put into a Roth, a child's retirement. I believe that's the number. And so that's great if they don't use it, because that was always the fear that that money didn't get used and you can only use it for educational stuff. But there are some provisions where you can switch that over to another family member for them to use,
Yeah.
and so that's pretty
Yeah,
cool
so
too.
here's a couple things on that. The lifetime limit is $35,000 to a Roth IRA. And here's the thing where the law was enacted and people are like, "Oh, great." But here's the big caveats is that there's a 15-year rule. The 529 must have been maintained for at least 15 years. So you can't create a new one, throw 35 in there and then switch it. And then the other rule is the money you roll over must have been in the account for at least 5 years, including the earnings. So, um, and then the rollover counts towards their annual Roth IRA contribution limit. So, anyway, there's some limitations around that or some guidelines around that. But I think one thing I want to make sure people are hearing is that you can open accounts for people far before they will really understand the impact of them or even feel the impact. But again, I think about all the I'll share a quick story. I went to someone's kid's birthday party, and I think they were turning. Yeah, the kid was turning 2. I think we all know what 2-year-old birthday parties are about, and it's not
Yeah.
about the kid. Now we love the kid, but it's a chance to celebrate together and get to. But the kid, it's like it's just another day, kind of. You know what I mean? They're not gonna be like, man, I remember. They're not gonna
Yeah.
remember anything.
Yep.
And I think about like there were probably. I'm such a downer for saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It was probably when all was said and done between food and gifts, um, and special balloons that they got bought by some balloon designer. It was
Mhm.
probably 3 grand
Mm.
that day, you know? Now I went and it was a good food, you know, and the balloons were cool, but 3 grand for a 2-year-old for the next 16, 17, like, there's a lot of potential. There's no guarantee of what that money's gonna do, but that's a lot of potential, and I'm not saying, like, don't have parties. I'm just saying the impact when kids are young is pretty phenomenal towards that. So
Yeah.
as a grandparent, I think that's a great gift
So
is
let's do some compound interest calculating real quick.
alright,
If we have $3,000 and it makes, let's just pull a number, say 5% for the next 16 years until they're 18. We didn't contribute anything else. So 3,000 for 16 years at 5%. If we were able to maintain that 5% return on average, or not average, but
okay,
every year 5%, we
okay.
didn't any more money to it. You got the math figured out in your head. You're a math whiz, right?
Nope, go ahead. I don't
65.48. It more than doubles. 65.48 is what that would have turned into.
yeah,
Um, that's
that's a
interesting.
great birthday party.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But
they're not going to invite us to any birthday parties though. If we,
I listen, one of the most offensive sermons I ever heard was there was a mention in a sermon about don't own pets because pets cost too much money, and I almost stood up and walked out of the church. I was like 10. Like, "This is the most sacrilegious. God loves my dog," you know? So, we're not going there. We're just talking about what you can do with your kids, and I do think that having different accounts, understanding their flexibility. David, you make a great point. Less and less people are going into higher education, traditional higher education. So maybe you want to have an account that has a little bit more leniency when it comes to how it's spent. The things you can spend it on if they don't want to go to traditional 4-year college or cosmetology school, things like that. But you can do those things very early. Let's talk about when you make your kids buy their own things or replace their own things if it breaks, things like that. Like, let's just say you're a grandparent and you're like, okay, I know that my grandson loves, bicycles, or he wants to get a new baseball bat, but it costs $500. Have you ever done anything with your kids to help them kind of earn some or towards something specific?
that's we have. I don't think we actually have done.
Well,
I should.
let me tell you one from my youth.
I
And
was.
it involved the original Nintendo and a KFC bucket. So KFC, fried chicken, we were a big fan,
Yep.
and I remember we got a KFC bucket, and apparently it was very clean because I don't remember it being dirty, but we used it, my brother and I, and we had to save $50, to buy the Nintendo because it was $100 when it came out,
Okay.
um, and, let me see the year, the original. So it came out in let's see. Yeah, I would have been about 8 or 9 when it came out, and I remember just putting in 50 cents, putting in a dollar took a long time for us to get $50 in 1985. But once you got that $50, and here's the other thing, it wasn't $100, it was $100 plus tax.
Mm,
When we got there, my mom's like, "You need another $6, $3." And we're like, "No," she's like, she goes, "I'm just kidding, you can have." She paid the tax. But it took us a long time. But this is 40 years later, literally, and I remember the feeling
mm.
of putting money in the bucket. And I remember opening the lid and going, "Oh, it's getting bigger," right? And I remember going to guess where we bought it?
Circuit
Target.
City. Oh,
No,
Target.
Target,
Really?
Target,
Okay.
baby. Going to Target, I mean, I could probably remember the row I was in. I remember the feeling of reaching. I remember going and bringing the bucket to Target and putting it up on the little thing and being like, "Here you go." And the lady's probably like, "What is," you know? But counting all that money out for that lady, that cashier, and boy, I really, really appreciated that. I really
Okay.
appreciated it. Like,
Yeah. You
and
took
I
good
don't know as
care of
much as I appreciated my mom as much as I appreciated how hard I had worked, but I was still a kid, you know?
that is great. We try to tell Amelia how to earn money and so forth, and the challenge with her is she'll start making these crafts and things, and then
Yeah.
she'll, like, have a store, and we're like, "Well, how do we get people to the store?" And it's just
Right.
like back and forth, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think, like, the elephant in the room, though, is that how do you not spoil your kids?
Mm.
Like, isn't that really, like, the underlying, like, fear of this whole conversation is if you're gonna give your kids or not do stuff, are you spoiling them? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what you fear with or that's what I fear anyway,
Yeah.
that your
Yeah.
kids aren't turn out and they're
Yeah.
gonna be idled or something like that.
I was
Eh
talking with a neighbor, last week, and she was talking about her frustrations with her grandkids because she said they don't know how to work.
Yeah.
They just don't. Because I had brought my daughter with me. We were doing a little project at that's how my kids mostly make money, is we have a neighborhood of about 200 houses, every t in our area, it's like little subdivisions everywhere. And so we have about 200 houses in our neighborhood, and people just know that our kids will show up to put mulch in or seal your driveway or clean out your dryer vent or help you paint a room or whatever. Like you can call me and I'll bring a kid with me and we'll do that stuff. And my
Nice.
kids, that's how my daughter, she has to we pay for my daughter's ballet lessons, but she has to pay for her own ballet shoes and she gets point shoes. And point shoes last for about 2 months
Oh,
and they're about $140, right?
wow. That's expensive.
Um, and so they're not built to last a long time. There's anyway. So when she went to point shoes, we go do work for them, right? And this lady, we were doing some work. She said, "It's so great you bring your kids and teaching them to work for a dollar." And she said, my grandkids, they don't know what anything costs. They don't
Mm,
have to do anything for anything. So I think even the basics of earning an allowance because you do these things, your job is to keep your room clean. When the dishwasher needs to be emptied, you get the stuff on the lower end because you kids aren't that tall.
mhm.
Your kids on a ladder trying to put a glass away. But yeah, you're right. We are trying to teach them that. But I think it's in today's day and age, it's a lot more about saying no um, than it is saying yes. Because the fact that, we have kids walking around with $1,000 devices in their hand.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yep.
crazy. You know
It
what I
is
mean?
crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I would not. I didn't have anything that had that measure of value. My Nintendo stayed at home. You know what I mean? Let me ask you a question about when kids are older. How do you envision, or how could a grandparent or a parent help their kid understand? Like, you want to have some spending money, you want to have some savings, but is there a time when they should start to go, "Hey, you should probably have a credit score"?
Yeah, there's a so I don't know how successful this is working, but you can add authorized users to your credit cards, and apparently this helps with their credit score. And so I have put my daughters, or I think I put both of them on one of my credit cards to try to establish credit for them, so that they cannot have to build that from scratch when they're 18. Um, credit is an important thing, and it makes life easier when you have credit, and when you're a good steward of it, there's no issue with having credit and how you manage that. But I think having some conversation about that. Surely, by the time you're 18, you want to do that. The challenge, though, is once you get 18, like all these magical offers just start showing up And, do you still get those? I don't feel like I get credit card offers as much anymore.
You must have
Uh,
opted out because they like
yeah.
me.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And again, and there are people out there, um, some of whom have massive businesses and are headquartered 10 miles north of me,
yeah,
that would say that you should never ever own a credit card, right? And again, respectfully disagree. I think that the conversation that you can have with your kids is understanding. We're gonna have a whole episode about this, about just credit and the benefits and the pitfalls of credit. Uh, is when if your kids had a credit card, right? Let's say your daughter goes to college, they're 18. They used to have free T-shirt if you sign up for a credit card on my campus. And so in college, I probably had 5 credit cards
yeah.
because I wanted a T-shirt,
Right,
right?
right.
Now I didn't use all but maybe one of them, right? But how scary is that? Your daughter comes from college, says, "Dad, I got a credit card in my own name for $2,000, but I got this cool T-shirt." And you're like, "Have you used it?" "Oh yeah, I've got $1,000 on it." "Are you paying it?" "Not really." I mean, so so what would be your hope or reason for your kids to actually have a credit card?
Well, there's nuance to it, and like maybe if people cannot be judicious and wise and discerning with what they're doing, they shouldn't have credit. And maybe there's the majority of people that are like that. I don't know,
Well,
but
let's assume they're your kids because I think
yeah, yeah,
your kids are gonna be pretty savvy. I want my kids. My son just turned 18, and
right,
and he will be getting his own card, and he will be paying for gas. Like, I'm gonna begin with just pay your gas. That's the only
yeah,
thing you're allowed to use this card for. Um, and he's gonna pay it off immediately every month, but I want him to start to see that, have a cap on it, and I do want his credit score to get great because the way we're going to operate is he's going to need and use credit at some point. Again, some people think you don't need to and yada yada, but 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 that's how we're going to use it. One thing, pay it off every month, but have one and start to build it.
yeah. I mean, we just bought a new office building, Andy, and we
Yeah,
needed.
congratulations.
Thank you. We needed to buy it quickly because we got booted out of our lease, and with little notice. And of course, I'm not sitting on cash to be able to pay this outright. And so, because we have excellent credit, we were able to get that done in less than 2 months, like probably like 40 days or less. And whereas if I had not had a credit score, how many months would that have taken to underwrite a loan without a credit score? Like, it would have taken a long time, and they probably would have been really apprehensive trying to do that. And
Mhm.
all the while, the business is just kind of floundering out here with nowhere to go. And so, do you go and lease a place, and then you're saving up money to do that? It just doesn't. It's not practical in today's world to not have credit and to operate like that for the majority of people.
Yeah,
But again, if it's kind of like if you're an alcoholic, like I totally understand never touching alcohol, uh, but it's just like if you are a spender and you're going to spend all your money and go into debt and not pay your credit, like going to work, then probably you shouldn't have credit cards. But for the majority of people, there's some nuance in between all of that where they
yeah,
can manage it, and it's going to be a blessing to their life if they're a good steward of that and
yeah.
allow them.
And I think that you think about the actual costs. We were talking about this earlier. The costs of money.
Right.
Borrowing money costs money,
Yes.
and when people really truly understand at those payday loan places, the
Yeah.
interest can be, just absolutely astronomical compared to if you had good credit and you're able to go to the bank or credit union and say this. I remember we have loans on one of our 3 cars still. And, there's a credit union in town. It's the only thing I use them for is car loans. And I go, "I don't know what's up with you guys, but you always have 2% less." And they're like, "We don't know why either, but we do." And so they
Yeah.
do a ton of car loans for them. And just knowing that, like, my car could cost $3,000 more if I didn't have good credit and if I didn't shop around, it's like, it will save you money, right? And
Right.
again, if you don't use that, I get it, pay cash only, yada, yada. But I think as a grandparent or as a parent, it's like, I want my kids to be able to have the option. And that's really what, David, you're talking about today is when you have credit, when something happens, like someone says, you need to move out in the next 30 days. I mean, imagine that happens to one of your kids. They're renting a apartment and they don't realize the lease says, "Hey, when your lease is up, you can renew or we can kick you out." You know, it doesn't say that, kick you out, but it says we can have you vacate, whatever the official language is. If your kid doesn't have good credit and they have to go find another place, well, some landlords will say, "No, you don't have good credit," you know? It makes it harder, you know? So these are things that parents, grandparents can have conversations with kids, grandkids about, can be involved. Hey, let's go to the bank and have you sign up for the card. You know, let's keep it simple. Let's maybe get a card from the same bank your accounts with, so you can see it all on one dashboard. Because when you don't see money, a lot of times you're disconnected from it. You know what I mean? Um, and then another thing I think it's cool from a grandparent perspective. It's a touch point to talk about with your grandkids.
Yeah.
You know, how's that savings account going? How's that, you know, how's your savings goal going towards this or that? But it's a very core memory for me when I've had to save up for things. And I look forward to being a part of I already am part of my kids, but even with grandkids someday, God willing, of being a part of that. And, you know, there's the grandparents I remember. I have an Aunt Mary who is my grandmother's sister. So it was great Aunt Mary. And every time I saw her, she'd give us $1, right? Right? And that's cool. But what's even cooler is to say, "Hey, go do this. I'm gonna give you $10 for doing this task, and I'm gonna put $10 in a savings account." And so it's like, what if you were the grandparent that they were like, "What can I work at?" Right? Every time you go to their house, "What can I do for you, grandpa?"
Oh, yeah.
And you know that you're gonna get cash there, and then you're also gonna get some into an account, and you're like, "That's my grandpa's savings account." You know what I mean? So they work for it, and they also get a savings. And these are the kind of things, that kind of conversations that you can have if you work with David. It's like, how can I help my grandkids be better with my money? You know what I mean? Their money. And these are the kind of human nuanced conversations you can have. David, as we wrap up, I want to ask you, what do you think is something that is sort of low hanging fruit for a grandparent to do? They come in, they're close to retirement. They've got grandkids of various ages. They've got, you know, extra money that they wanna bless their grandkids with. What would be your earliest, quickest advice to, like, "Okay, here's something we could do this week," if you wanna just bless them financially?
I mean, my philosophy is the verse in Proverbs where it says, "A wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children," and so I think it's would be amazing if we can leave something to our grandchildren and so forth. And I pray every day that I'm able to do that one day. But I think your idea of opening a custodial account and just instead of getting them another sweater or another plastic toy, dropping that bucks into a custodial account for them to be able to use for their wedding or a down payment or something like that would be huge. One more story before we wrap this up. I have 2 nephews. I have 2 nephews and a niece that are in their 20s, and so I really try to help them with financial advice and life advice. And so the oldest one or the youngest one just graduated from college, and when he was going to college, he was 100% on his own. And he came to me and he's like, "I need to get an apartment, and the landlord is wanting me to need a cosigner because I don't have any credit." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I'm like really apprehensive. You know, there's another verse in Proverbs that talks
Yeah,
about how you are
don't do that.
don't do that. Don't co-sign for people, even when it's your family. And that's another tip there. And so I'm thinking about it, praying about it, trying to figure out what to do. And he's told me that he has plenty of money, like thousands of dollars in the bank. And he's like a super hard worker and works overtime and so forth. And I'm like, well, what is the total amount of rent that you would need for the 9 months? And he tells me the amount. I'm like, well, you have that money sitting in the bank. So why don't you go to the landlord and say, "Hey, I'd just like to prepay my rent." And he goes to the landlord and says, "I'd like to prepay my rent." And she's shocked and can't believe it. She's like, "Well, you don't need a cosigner." And that was the end of the day. And so just so many more options when you are a saver too, to be
Yeah.
able to like that.
What a
And
great story. Yeah.
the other cool thing, man, is he didn't have to depend on other people. The thing is when you don't have credit, Andy, and you maybe you're just getting started in life, that means that you have to depend on other people. And I don't know about you, but the whole thing in my mind is I don't want to depend on other people for sustenance and to be able to survive in life. And so that is not a pleasant thought to me. And so when you're a saver and you have credit, you can be more independent. And at the end of the it's just giving people more options, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. I will give a warning though, as a parent, when you teach your kids to save and they know how much they have saved and they want something, you've gotta be ready to answer the question, "Why can't I have that? It's my money." And you're like,
Mm.
"Oh, I've created a monster," because you're right, it is your money and you've earned it, and, and sometimes you gotta let them buy something dumb because it's
Yeah.
their money, you know what I mean? Like, I've done that many times where I'm like, "Okay, I guess
You
you can
work
get it."
hard, you work hard, you ought to be able to reward yourself a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. Well, you just know it's like, okay, you can get that $80 sweater that you might wear twice, but okay, it is your money. You know what I mean? So anyway, just be prepared.
Yeah.
When you got a saver, you gotta let go. It's their money, but that's a good problem to have. David, thanks so much for your ongoing wisdom about this. And I want to encourage folks, if you have not met with someone like David to have these kind of conversations, reach out to him. There's some resources wherever you're listening or watching this. There's gonna be some links. To directly reach out to David and also get some resources from him and some of his weekly updates. So, David, as always, thanks for your wisdom and thanks for your time. Investment advisory services offered through Creative One Wealth, a registered investment advisor. Clients Excel and Creative One Wealth LLC are not affiliated. Licensed insurance professional. We are not affiliated with any government agency and do not provide tax or legal advice. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No investment strategy can ensure a profit or guarantee against losses. Insurance product guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing company. Investment advisory services are provided in accordance with a fiduciary duty of care and loyalty that includes putting your interests first and disclosing conflicts. Insurance services have a best interest standard, which requires recommendations to be in your best interest. Advisors may receive commission from the sale of insurance and annuity products.